Wolfen Kings of ashtar. Serious party 2. I guess so, Matu agreed. If I lived in a world that does not permit hesitation or any form of challenge, most assuredly I would be ruthless and violent if I wanted to survive. Matu was about to ask a question when Master P answered it. What hesitation in form of challenge? What is this? If a violent word is all you know, then one does not question the use of violence. It is as natural to the Wolfen people as it is for human beings on earth to stoop to help a giant bird or whimpering puppy. Violence is a way of life, Matu, and as dreadful as it might seem, it is a very strong motivation force. Pei stood up and walked over to the window again. What? What did you say? If a violent word is all you know, then one does not question the use of violence. It is natural to the Wolfen people as it is for human beings on earth to stoop to help any giant bird. Yeah, because we have, no matter what they say about people who wears this body suit, which is a human body, no matter what they say, we are still evolved compared to these beasts. We are evolved. The exploration of space, at least many of us are evolved. Only little few beasts are not. Are still in the dark. But I still think that there's no excuse. There should be no excuse for being stupid. This is called stupidity and lack of wisdom and warnings. These beings are in the dark. And it's a pity that if they are still like this, then I'm sorry for them. The exploration of space was seen in a different way by the Wolfen people. As I said before, when they looked to the stars, they dreamed not of walking on strange new worlds and meeting strange new beings, but rather they imagined themselves ruling as kings of new lands and territories. How stupid. You see, a person is stupid when they are greedy of new populations and new forms of treasure. Other bodies in the sky were not to be reached for. They were to be seized. Stupid. It is important to remember, Matu, that every aspect of life in the Wolfen world, from daily work to home life, from the marketplace to the empire, from personal life to public life, everything was oriented towards conquest, expansion, and obedience to the throne. Pei stopped and gazed at the sky. Matu always wondered what thoughts were running through his master's mind at the time. What faraway thought was he entertaining? He had wondered. Is he thinking he cannot tell me something because it might be too frightening? Or is he thinking what he might tell me next? Someday I hope I'm at the window, Matu thought to himself, wondering what I shall tell my apprentice next. It's here, Matu, he began again, that I wish to tell you of the most ingenious invention of the Wolfen. I would say chimera people, not even a wolf. This is a chimera people. It is both a wondrous star shape and a terrified shape. It was the principal vehicle in the conduction of the Chimera Wars and the pivotal weapon in most of the conquests of the RRR Empire. It is a starship that was known simply as the R. The R, Matu wrote it down. A true derivation of the name R, I bet. Many civilizations of star beings developed and created starships, men of exceptional size and maneuverability. Most starships were huge, round globes, the shape most efficient in the wide open spaces between stars and worlds. constructed and fabricated of super metals. These shiny and silvery ships were generally the vehicle most civilizations would develop when they learned to travel the stars. But here, Matu, here is another testimonial to a brilliancy and cunning of the woven of the chimeras ones. Where most star races develop and produce their starship from the supermetals of their worlds, the Ra produced their starship in a most unique way. In the course of reaching for the stars, the Chimera scientists began to develop methods to mine and exploit the natural resources of asteroids and meteorites of their solar system. Because of the highly unstable three-sun system, fragments of primordial world, three suns. If we cannot take one, imagine three. My God, I'll die. Fragments of primordial worlds as well as newly destroyed planets were abundantly available. By burrowing into the core of the asteroids, instead of attempting to mine the surface, scientists were able to remove valuable and precious minerals in a far more productive and cost-efficient manner. What they had not anticipated, however, was that the mining process that hollowed out an asteroid would result in a shell that would become an extraordinarily deadly warship. It was extremely simple and amazingly clever. By taking the remaining rock shell, open miles thick, and adding appropriate venting exhaust ports, then by installing powerful star drives and death-dealing weaponry, the forces of the RRR Kings found themselves in the possession of a warship that was easily and inexpensively produced, and it was easily hidden from the enemy, while other star races created enormous starships that were laden with extraordinary offensive and defensive war weapons. The large silvery globes were easily detected. The hollowed-out asteroid warship of the Chimera Kings, however, could easily enter an alien solar system undetected. By hiding in the midst of other orbiting asteroids, or simply by hurtling through the star lanes while emitting the appropriate gases, the airships could move quietly into targeted solar systems. At the appropriate moment, thousands of asteroid warships began their devastating attack. It should come as no surprise that most worlds and the military forces were simply caught off guard by the Wolfen warship and decimated. This was the brilliancy of the techniques of war of the RRR warriors. The methods were simple but effective. Stealth was the greatest tactic of the Wolfen warriors, and the asteroid warship christened the R by the Chimera Kings became the power behind the space fleet of the RRR Empire. Holy cow! Again, an asteroid has been hollowed out. That's positively brilliant. How easy it would be to hide. Brilliant, just there. The victory of the Wolfen warriors were quick and decisive. Through the vicious and cruel tactics of the soldiers on the battlefield, to the stealthy maneuvers of the RRR warships, the invasion by the Wolfen star forces were lightning, sudden, and devastatingly overwhelming. With these techniques, this expansion of the Wolfen realm was limited only by the number of Chimera commanders available to lead the Empire invading armies. Unlike the reptilians who reprogrammed the conquered populations, the Wolfen ones simply devoured any resistance, quite literally. The incorporation of subjugated armies into the invasion force of the Wolfen Empire was difficult. Military coups were attempted, almost all of them failed. Armies who remained with the Wolfen forces often did so out of fear. But given a chance, they would abandon the battlefield, running for the skies in desperate search of escape. For this reason and others, any and all invasions had to be led by the Chimera commanders. This, in and of itself, was the only factor that prevented the wider expansion of the our realms. Yet they were successful matter that cannot be denied. The conquest of the Chimera Kings had been exceptional in their expanse. No one seemed to be able to stop them. Until, however, their conquering ways had taken them a little too close to the realms of the older and infinitely more powerful empire of the reptilian queens. Hoops, Matu smiled and he made nooks. This ought to be good. Reptilian warrior and Wolfen warrior. Reptilian queen and Wolfen king. Wow, this is going to be real good. Per left the window and returned to his chair. Yeah, Matu thought. If Per has to sit down, this is going to be real good. Running from the central star of Edanas to the outer edges of the galaxy is a very important interstellar trail that connects star to star, world to world. It is a passageway of both commerce and travel, linking the primordial central worlds to the outer perimeter. The trail was known as the Peshmitten, the Nice passageway running through the heart of the SS Reptilian Empire. The Nice passageway provided the vital links to the inner worlds and the outer worlds. Travelers, whether on business or political missions, were constantly on the Nice passageway. Commercial vehicles carrying precious ore and valuable treasures made their way on the Peshmitten. It was without any question vital to the security and welfare of the Reptilian Queen Empire. To the misfortune of the Chimera Kings, their conquest had taken them to the very edges of the Nice passageway. The Queen had not been totally unaware of their movement, but she had not moved to stop them as yet. When they moved perilously closer to the heart of the passageway, the Reptilian Queen could take no chances. She immediately sent a dispatch to the Wolfen King. Cease and desist your wars and movement upon the Nice passageway. Wild or be totally destroyed. Such were the words of the Queen. Wow, Matu thought, here we go. The kings had, of course, heard of the Reptilian Empire and had had minimal contact with them, but they had not considered that their war campaigns had taken them within a range that might be perceived as a threat by the SSS queens. The queen of the SS Empire had also heard of the Wolfen Kings. She had found their conquering ways reluctantly admirable, if not just a bit barbaric. Perhaps if they had extended their empire in a different direction, she would not have interfered with them. But they had not. They had entered her realm, and she would tolerate no interference with her empire. She was also aware of their potentially deadly and unpredictable behavior. Barbaric beings of this sort possessed a primitive mentality that could hardly remain consistent and logical. It was also likely that these beings may not have the wisdom to know when to cease their attacks. While this was a desirable trait for warriors, it was a trait not to be welcomed with one's enemies. And at this point, Matu, we shall see the wisdom and extraordinary abilities of the Queen of the Reptilian Beings. In the communique sent to the Wolfen Kings, The queen issued a threat of devastating retaliation if the borders of the empire were violated. But in an unexpected move, the queen submitted an offer that was seldom extended to any potential enemy. The queen offered an alliance between the two empires, and it was an offer that the Wolfen Kings could hardly reject. "Oh, great!" Matu made a face. "Two of the most terrifying forces in the galaxy instead of fighting it out until one loses, decide to join forces. Great, just great. Yeah, too bad these understand to one another after all. Two villains. If the Wolfen Kings would agree to align themselves to the SS Empire, the Queen would grant them significant territories and trade routes, and she would officially sanction their continued expansion as long as it remained distant and apart from the Reptilian Empire, and in particular away from the Ninth Passageway. The Wolfen Kings would receive an immediate payment in precious metals and resources as a fee for the acceptance of the proposed terms. The Wolfen Kings would have the authority to use the name of the Queen in any political negotiations, and if it became necessary, the forces of the SSS Queen would support their every move in the stars. All enemies of the Chimera Reptilian RRR Kings became enemies of the Reptilian SS Queen and her empire. And finally, should the Chimera Kings accept the alliance, the Queen would elevate the warriors' armies of the Wolfen King to the official status of enforcers of the empire, a rank higher than any of the armies of any other worlds, second only to the elite forces of the Queen herself. Wolfen commanders would assume control of many of the key military forces of the Reptilian Queen's armies, and would have available to them the many resources and most advanced warships developed by the SS war sciences and technologies. In short, the Wolfen Kings would have the power of the throne of the Reptilian Empire behind them and at their disposal. This, Matu, was an extraordinary offer. "It sure is," Matu agreed, and cautioned silence. "It sure is. But..." Here it comes," Matu thought. "Better grab your seats, Wolfen Kings." In exchange for these extremely significant concessions, the SS Queen demanded unhesitating loyalty and total obedience to her throne. The Wolfen Kings would execute her every command, unquestioningly, unhesitatingly, and with all of the force and fury that they could muster. The Wolfen Kings would immediately turn over half of the wealth of the entire Chimera, feline, whatever, empire to the Queen, and Chimera Reptilian empire to the Queen, and I would continue to send her half of any future gains. The Queen would immediately become the supreme being and the ultimate power of the Wolfen Empire. All official ceremonies and royal events would begin by addressing her power and by paying homage to her, and pay also monetary help, monetary gains also give her, because all she wants is power and monetary things and values for whatever commerce. And I don't get it. How would a so-called misogynist, male-oriented colonist and culture accept the offer from this being who was a female? I don't think she's a female. I really don't. There's something not fishy. He doesn't fit into my puzzle of logics and understanding. Really, status as the supreme being from the moment the alliance was agreed upon, the king would relinquish his status as the most important individual in the empire and would become known as the representative of the female queen. From the moment the alliance was signed, no chimera reptilian mixed with cats and dogs would ever hold on to the throne without the princess daughter of the queen herself sitting by his side. And no Wolfen king could ever make any decision without the approval of the new queen, the princess's daughter herself. Damn, Matu thought to himself, that surrounds a great deal of power, and she gave them one other extremely important benefit. One other benefit? Matu wondered. What the heck could that be? She allowed them to remain alive. Yup, Matu realized, excellent benefit. The queen was quite shrewd, Matu. She was an excellent military tactician. After sending her dispatch to the Wolfen Kings with his order to cease hostilities and her offer of an alliance between the two thrones, the queen allowed only a very short period of time for the RRR Monarchs to consider her message. It is, of course, standard practice to attempt to stall the action of any enemy who approaches and threatens retaliation. This has been done by numerous empires in the stars and has been a tactic used here on Earth. As the final moments approached, the Wolfen Kings sent a message that they needed more time to consider the Queen's offer. At the precise moment the time limit has been reached, the SSS-TAK forces descended on 3 invading armies of the Wolfen Kings. In moments they were totally and completely obliterated, not just destroyed, Matu. Obliterated. Even the RRR ship had been totally wiped out as a matter of precaution. In fact, every asteroid in the vicinity of the 3 invasion armies were also destroyed. To further establish her position, the queen made use of the incredible pinpoint accurate death rays of the Mach warriors. Half a dozen of the king's personal staff were immediately terminated, their brains burned from the inside by light beams that came from seemingly out of nowhere. Several of the communications networks were all suddenly seized by carefully placed spies in the king's military and administration. The quick and stunning display of the queen's power was most effective. Jeez. Matu shook his head. I guess so. There was little debate, Matu. The Wolfen Kings knew that the queen had the power to completely obliterate their armies and their empire. The offer extended was one that simply could not be refused. While it seemed that they would surrender much without question, it was also clear that they would also gain tremendous power, and they could leave. There was no choice but to agree. Wow, and perhaps someday the queen would sleep and the Wolfen Kings might step in to take over their reigns. Yes, I'm sure they thought of that, Matu smiled. As part of the agreement, the queen promised never to reveal how easily the kings had been personally attacked. This would preserve their image as near invisible kings to their subjects. The official story released in the Wolfen Empire portraying the stunning skill and insight displayed by the Wolfen Kings in their negotiation with the Queen. Based on the extraordinary bravery and courage, the fearsome abilities in war, the Queen of the reptilian people had proposed an alliance rather than go to war with them. And although the reptilian empire was larger and possessed greater depth, weaponry and ships, it was the cunning of the kings that allowed them to secure such a high position in the empire of the queen. And although the possession of enforcer must seem a secondary possession, the power and technology gained would portend great potential for the future of the RRR Empire. That's correct, Matu smiled. Just drop your guard once, Queen. The Wolfen people were quick to accept the assessment and judgment of the kings, and readily assumed their position as enforcers of the empire. A grand display in the skies of the power knew that ship that the Wolfen warriors would now have access to help it, and giving the impression access to helped in giving the impression that the Wolfen people had secured the upper hand in their relationship with the SS Queen. A grand display of astounding dirty rays and sound guns, with other equally stunning weaponry, finished off the ceremony before the official signing of the alliance. He sounds like, I don't know, looks like human. With the signing of the alliance, the princess daughter of the SS Reptilian Queen was presented to the Wolfen people as their new queen. Standing proudly beside her was the reigning Wolfen King of Kings. Her never-ending presence was a sign that the queen of the most powerful empire in the East sector completely trusted the king and his subjects in the very life of her daughter. And it was also an assurance to the king and his subjects that the queen would never attack the empire. For the queen, however, the presence of the daughter in the royal court at the side of the Wolfen king of the RRR Empire ensured that nothing contrary to the wishes of the queen would ever take place on the Wolfen World Court. She's good, Matu marveled. She's really good. The alliance was made. The queen secured the vicious Wolfen warriors for her staff forces, while the Wolfen kings receiving the backing and complete support of the Reptilian Queen and her empire. A marriage had been made in heaven. Great. This is really literally a marriage made in heaven. Great, Matu said to himself, just great. So that's all now, for now.